Hello, everybody, and welcome back to British English Podcast with Lewis. And this is your weekly video podcast where I speak relatively slowly and clearly using advanced vocabulary, idioms, phrasal verbs, speaking about different topics every Friday. And this is just the third episode, so I'm still getting used to making these videos and getting the hang of how to do it and what to say. But for your information, I do this completely unscripted. So I'm making it up as I go along. I don't really know exactly what I'm going to talk about until I get started. So I am playing it by ear. To play something by ear is like to improvise and adapt as you are doing something. This idiom comes from playing the guitar or playing any musical instrument, where if you are not reading the instructions and like the music notes and all of that stuff, you're just playing it from memory and experience. You are playing it by ear without a specific plan. So that's what I do with these video podcasts. Of course, you don't have to watch me whilst you are listening. You can just listen and not look at all of the funny gestures and stuff like that I'm doing in the meantime. But what are we going to speak about today? Because I've prepared a nice topic, and this is a topic that is an integral part of our lives. Because in today's world and technology and economy, companies, individuals, and others are always competing for our attention. So they're trying to get our attention. Right now, in recording this podcast, I am trying to get your attention, of course. When I make short videos, I'm trying to get your attention. TV series, films, concerts, you name it. All of these things, these leisure activities and this media is trying to grab people's attention. And it's become a kind of cutthroat industry. If we just think about all of the platforms where we can watch documentaries, series, reality TV programs, and films, there are 5 huge candidates to be the big leader to take the lion's share of the industry. For example, Netflix, Amazon Prime, Apple TV, Disney Plus, HBO. That's just a few of them. That is just the tip of the iceberg. And we haven't even mentioned YouTube, because nowadays, I do not consider myself to be of a very high standard of editing and video production. But if we look at Mr. Beast, the biggest YouTuber on the planet, he creates stuff that is basically like watching normal TV programs or films. So the production level has increased by all of these independent creators. So we all have the same aim, and it is to grab people's attention. And it's up to the viewer and the consumer to decide whether they invest their time to learn things, to entertain themselves, or to just forget about all of the problems in the world. Because I am guilty sometimes of watching rubbish on TV. I watch Love is Blind all the time on Netflix, and it's terrible. I know it's all staged, it's all set up, but sometimes after work and when I'm reading the news and I'm stressed and I'm busy and I have different worries, all I want to do is kick back, relax, unwind, not think about anything, and just be distracted from our concerns and problems as adults. So you're not alone. I do this as well. But what I would recommend is that when you are watching TV series, documentaries, and films, you always do it in English. And I'm biased, but I would argue that it's better to do it in British English. There's a lot more content in American English, of course, Hollywood. But, if you're already listening to this podcast or watching my videos, I assume that you prefer British English. Let me know if that is the case. And that's why I thought that in today's video podcast, I would recommend 15 really good British English TV shows and series and talk shows that you can start watching from today to improve your English. But before we get into them, I often receive this question, and it is, should I turn on subtitles or not? And then a nice follow-up question is, should I use subtitles in my mother tongue or in English? Well, it's tricky, and there are pros and cons of both approaches. I would say, my own personal preference, that it is better to watch series and stuff like that with subtitles. And you might be a bit surprised, like, really, Lewis? If you've got subtitles, you're not really focusing because you're reading everything and you're not actually practicing and training your listening skills. I know what you mean. Perhaps you've got a point. But for me, it's nice to be able to read from time to time a few words and phrases in case anything wasn't completely clear to you and you didn't quite understand everything. It's good to have that little companion, that little backup that will help you to read what it says, know and find out if you're actually familiar with that word or phrase. And then if it is new, well, it's written there. So then you can write it down in a notebook or you can add it to your notes app on your phone, for example. So that is my personal preference. I prefer to always watch things with subtitles, but it has to be subtitles in English, of course, because the way that some people express ideas and thoughts in one language is not the same as in another language. So the subtitles might not actually be a direct translation for what they're saying. So stay away from subtitles in your own language. Just try subtitles in English and watching the program. If you don't understand some words and phrases, don't worry, it's no big deal, it's fine. Just enjoy the process, and the more you listen and the more you watch shows, the easier it will become. And you will also start to learn more and more phrases that will be repeated over and over again. So it will get easier. Trust me. Comparing series and films to how I'm speaking, of course, there is a steep learning curve. So it will be difficult to get used to it and to adapt to it because they're not going to speak as clearly as I speak. But if you practice and continue and don't give up and you don't throw in the towel, trust me, things will get easier. Anyway, with all that being said, let's get started. And I'm going to share my screen in case you are watching. And I'm going to show you 15 typical British English TV shows. And I'm going to explain more or less what they're about, and I'll try to tell you where you can watch them. I don't want to advise you to use any illegal websites or anything like that, but if you really want to find a series, there is always a way, whether that's using a VPN or being a little bit creative, But this one is easy to watch because the first is The Crown. It's on Netflix, and many people might have watched this. I believe there are 6 seasons at the moment, and it uses a bit of creative freedom, but is a series about the British royal family. And it spans many, many decades from basically when Queen Elizabeth took over and became the Queen of the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth. And it's really interesting. The type of English is very, very posh. So they speak the Queen's English most of the time. But it's interesting also to understand the history, the interactions between different members of the royal family. And it's very easy to find because it's on Netflix. Personally, I'm not a royalist. I'm not a big fan of monarchies in general. If you disagree, that's absolutely fine. The whole thing and the whole point is about debating and discussing and respecting each other's opinions, which I believe I do. I respect everybody. But personally, if you ask me, I think it's better not to have a monarchy and not to have a family that is ruling over people just because of their last name and the history and the family tree. It just doesn't sit well with me. I don't like it. But that being said, the British royal family, generally speaking, I think they've been all right. There are members that have been involved in scandals. Quite a lot of members of the British royal family that have been involved in scandals. But usually, when you compare the royals to the Prime Minister, I would rather have the Queen being in control of everything than Boris Johnson, for example. So, despite us not electing them, they do bring in a lot of positives, and there are many people that visit London and the United Kingdom due to the royal family. So there are many positives, some negatives, but it is what it is. We're not going to change it anytime soon, I don't think. But The Crown is a wonderful way of understanding more about the history of the British royal family. You get to know what was happening in the United Kingdom and the world during different periods of time when Queen Elizabeth was the Queen. Of course, a few years ago, she passed away, and now we have kind of moved on. But The Crown continues to document and make interesting episodes about what is happening in the United Kingdom. So it's a really interesting series that you can watch both to improve your English, but not only that, because it will also teach you a lot about history and about British culture as well. So that's my first recommendation. It is The Crown. If you want to practice and learn some Queen's English. How about we move on to number 2? And this is an epic TV series that is really popular, really famous, and it has become a part of pop culture in recent years. And I believe it has now finished. They might be working on a film related to the series, but it is Peaky Blinders. And Peaky Blinders is about a family and a gang based in Birmingham in England during, I believe it was like the 20s. So I think it is just after World War I. And it is the Shelby family. And the main character is named Tommy Shelby. And it's played by an Irish actor, Cillian Murphy, who was also the main character in Oppenheimer, the film, which I believe won an Oscar. And it's kind of like a British mafia. So this was a time when the United Kingdom wasn't as rich as it has been in other eras. There were a lot of inequalities. And basically this family started out with some little dodgy deals, and they took bets on horse racing. They were a little bit violent, and they would try to assert their authority on the local people to run things and manage things, and at the same time earn power, influence, and money. But it's a really interesting series, in particular because of their accent, because the Brummie accent is quite complicated, and Brummie is a person from Birmingham. So they all put on a Brummie accent, at least the majority of the characters. So it's good training for your English listening skills. And it's set 100 years ago now. So it's interesting also to see what happens and what life was like back then. It's a bit of a thriller. There's lots of action. It can be a little bit violent at times, but Peaky Blinders is pretty epic. I'm a huge fan, and I would recommend everybody checks it out. And I believe it's also available on Netflix, but it was initially produced by the BBC. So that is my second recommendation. It is Peaky Blinders. Now, my third recommendation is a series called Happy Valley. So this is set in a valley in West Yorkshire. And I'm from West Yorkshire. So this is a really, really good series. There are only 3 seasons. And it's a crime police series. There's lots of intrigue. You never really know what's going to happen next. And every episode ends on a bit of a cliffhanger. So then you really want to find out what will happen in the following episode. But to sum it up in a few words, you've got the chief of police, or at least a high-ranking police officer. She's a woman. She's like in her 50s, I think. So she's very experienced. And she lost her daughter. So her daughter passed away. And now she is looking after her grandson, who was the son of her daughter. So it's very sad. That is the backing. And the father of her grandson is a kind of violent, rough man who is a bit of a criminal, and they clearly do not get on. They do not have a good relationship. And different things happen with local gangs. There's different crimes, murders, drug dealing. And it's always a bit of a battle between these two main characters, the senior police officer and this criminal. And it's a great series. I really enjoyed it. I first watched it with my girlfriend because I was like, amazing. This is English from Yorkshire. So I wanted to show her more of my accent, or at least how I usually speak when I'm not teaching. And she loved it. She absolutely loved it. And as I said, there are 3 different seasons, and each one is really, really good. So the level doesn't really get worse as the seasons continue. So that is Happy Valley. I'm not sure exactly where you can watch it, but as I said, I'm sure you will be able to find it for sure. So that is number 3. Now, moving on to number 4. It is more of a reality show. It's a game show, and it's quite a recent thing. And there is a British version, there's an Australian version, there's a Kiwi version, so from New Zealand, and also, I believe, an American version. And it's called The Traitors. The Traitors. And it's really good, first of all, because you will be able to listen to accents from all over the United Kingdom, because they recruit, I believe, like 25 different contestants. And then all of these contestants, they get on a train and they go to a castle in the north of Scotland, which is absolutely beautiful. And they kind of live in the castle for a few weeks. And the majority of the contestants are faithful. And if you are faithful, it means that you are in the majority, of course, and you cannot kill, quote unquote, the other contestants. And you have to find out who the traitors are. And there are generally 3 or 4 traitors. And every night when people go to sleep, they will choose to eliminate one contestant. They murder them. Of course, they don't actually murder them, but they'll meet up at night and they'll choose someone to get rid of and kick off the show. So there's a murder every night, but there's also a vote to banish someone every night. So there's a vote, you have a discussion, you kind of express your feelings about who you suspect might be a traitor, and everybody is pretending to be faithful, whether you are faithful or not. Everybody is pretending. And then from there, you have to choose who they think is a traitor, and then they eliminate them. So when you get to the end of the show, there's only 2 or 3 people remaining. And if the 3 people remaining or 2 people remaining are faithful. They split the money. However, if there is one traitor remaining, the traitor takes all of the money. So the stakes are high. There is a lot at stake. And it's a TV program that I think is quite addictive because, like I said, you want to see what's going to happen. And everybody is lying. They're all compulsive liars, but it's fun. It's good to improve your English because there are lots of normal conversations, discussions, but also one-on-one interviews. So you get to practice your English listening skills, and it's quite light-hearted despite all of the lying. So that is The Traitors. And yeah, I recommend it. It's a really good program. And there are 3 seasons out at the moment. Every season you have different contestants. So check it out. Give it a watch. All right, moving on. This is Peep Show. I'm not sure if this is the 4th or 5th recommendation, but forget the numbers. Who cares? But this is our first comedy. And it's very, very, very British. So it might be an acquired taste. People might not get it at the beginning. But it's about 2 guys who are in their late 20s, early 30s. They work. They are single, at least at the beginning of the series. And it shows a side of British culture which is very kind of ironic, very sarcastic, and it's not at all like The Crown. So it's just 2 relatively normal guys, a little bit geeky perhaps, and they go to work, they go out and get drunk, they meet different people, they have parties, and they end up in so many random scenarios and situations. So it's quite difficult to understand sometimes because of the nature of the humor, because a lot of people won't really get it at the beginning. But Peep Show is an epic program that has a bit of a cult following. So some people will absolutely adore it, and other people will watch an episode and they won't get it. They'll be like, it's not even that funny. What's going on? So I actually didn't watch it when it was first aired and when it first came out, but I binge watched it 2 or 3 years ago. And to binge watch is like to do a marathon of watching a series from the beginning until the end. So I was binge watching it over the Christmas holidays a couple of years ago, and I remember being in stitches. I was in stitches at certain moments. To be in stitches is to be laughing out loud, to be laughing a lot. So, like I said, it's not for everybody, but if you like comedies and you want to test yourself to see if you understand typical British comedies, then check out Peep Show. I think it's on Netflix, so it should be relatively easy to find. Now, the next recommendation is one that I'm sure most of you are quite familiar with already, and it is Top Gear. Top Gear. And if you're looking at the image at the moment, you'll see that Hammond, Jeremy Clarkson, and James May, they look very young. But this is a TV program that started like maybe 20 years ago. So it was one of these typical TV programs that was always out once per week, and I'd watch it with my dad because he likes cars. And this series is all about driving and cars. And basically, they would test new vehicles. They would do different challenges with old vehicles. The best episodes were always the ones where they would buy a car with different kind of conditions. So it couldn't be just any car. And then they would have to travel from one side of a country to another, or one side of a continent to another. And yeah, Top Gear, it's really good. If you are a motorhead and you love cars, then this is definitely a good recommendation for you. And there are endless episodes because, as I said, the TV series started maybe in the early 2000s and it continued up until a few years ago. And then the three of them, Richard Hammond, Jeremy Clarkson, and James May, then started their own programs on Amazon Prime, which also, check it out, really good. And Top Gear. It is a part of British culture that's been with us for quite a long time. And if you love cars, then this will definitely be the suggestion for you. So that is Top Gear. It's really good. Give it a go. Moving on to one of my faves, one of my favorites, and it is Come Dine with Me. So it's not the best quality program, but it is very easy watching. It's so easy to watch and have a laugh and enjoy. So let me explain how it works. You have 5 different people, sometimes 4 different people from a city or region, and they will invite others to come dine with them. So they will make a 3-course dinner, invite people to their houses, and try to impress them with their food, with their conversation, with their hosting skills. And then at the end of the night, all of the guests will vote. And they'll vote out of 10 based on these criteria: the food, the atmosphere, and so on. And it's really interesting because a lot of them are terrible cooks. They're terrible chefs, most of them. And just in the episode last week, I was speaking about how good British food can be. This is not a good representation of that, because most of the people who go on this program are not good at all. And you'll see that they all end up making the same food. But it's really interesting because culturally, it's fun to see 5 completely different people eating at each other's houses. And at the end of the week, there is, of course, a winner. Whoever gets the highest mark wins £1,000. So it's not a large amount of money, but, for a little bit of fun, meeting new people, cooking, and being on TV, it's quite nice. But some people who go on it are complicated people. Other people will be absolutely lovely and really nice, but there's others that'll always be there kind of looking for a bit of an argument or a fight. And those tend to be the best episodes, where you can see that you've got a couple of people arguing whilst going to each other's houses and eating their food. So it's really good watching. It's on Channel 4. And if you have a VPN and you change the country to the United Kingdom, you can go on 4 on demand and you can watch so many episodes. It's a bit of a guilty pleasure for me, to be honest, because it's not that good. But when I don't know what to watch, I end up watching something similar to this. It is Come Dine With Me. Now let's raise the standards and talk about a much better TV program. This is Line of Duty. Line of Duty. So again, it's related to police officers. And this is, I believe, I watched this series a few years ago, so I don't remember all of the details. But there are like 6 or 7 seasons, and you have police officers who are working in the anti-corruption department. So they're trying to be like the auditors almost, and find out if there are any dodgy cops, if there are any police officers that you cannot trust. And then as the series develops and advances, you will discover and find out that there are quite big issues and problems in the British police. Of course, this is not a real thing. It might be the case, but this is a fictional series. And as the story continues, they discover certain police officers who are involved in dodgy deals, who maybe collaborate with criminals, all sorts of things. And I remember starting to watch this because when I was scrolling up and down on Facebook and Instagram, a lot of my friends were posting that they were hooked. They were addicted. They were absolutely loving it. So I was like, I have FOMO. I have a fear of missing out. I don't want to miss out. If they say it's so good, then I've got to start watching it. And I did, and it did not disappoint. It lived up to expectations. So that is Line of Duty. It's all about the police, and corrupt cops. And it's really interesting. It was released on the BBC. Where you can watch it, I'm not 100% sure. But as I said, I'm sure you can find a way. Now, I'm going to tell you about a series that you might not like. So the next one, it's called The Inbetweeners. And this was a huge part of my teenage years. For anyone who was between, let's say, 13 and 20, maybe even 25, when this series came out, it was huge. It was enormous. It was a massive success. And it was about 4 random kids and teenagers who I think were like 16, 17, 18, and they were at high school or sixth form, and they were all a little bit weird, a little bit unusual. So they were the in-betweeners, that they didn't really belong in any social group. They were kind of nerds, they were geeks, they were a little bit special in many ways, and at the same time, they were very funny because they got into some random situations, trying to chat up different girls and flirt with different girls, going to different parties. So they would do all the typical things that young lads do when they're at high school or university, trying to be cool and build up their own reputation. And it is the Inbetweeners. There were 2 seasons, I think, only like 6 or 7 episodes in each season. And they were at school, finishing their high school at the time. Sometimes they would get bullied. Other times they'd just do the craziest things. Of course, it's a little bit inappropriate for very young children. And if you don't remember your teenage years, you might not enjoy it either, because there are some strange references. So it is definitely not everybody's cup of tea. But if you're looking for a kind of teenage comedy that's quite interesting, I would 100% recommend watching The Inbetweeners. And there are also 2 films of The Inbetweeners. The first one, I believe it's when they went on a lad's holiday to like Malia or Magaluf, which is something I did as well. So I could relate to these people. And then the second film was about when they went on a holiday to Australia, because one of them ended up working in Australia, which is also something I did. So basically what I'm telling you here is that many British people my age could really relate to this and really laugh out loud with it, and they were in stitches. So that is the Inbetweeners. It's not for everyone, but if you're up for what I've just described, then I promise you'll love it. Okay, continuing. We have Sherlock. Yes, it is Sherlock Holmes. And I know that Sherlock Holmes, there are many books, there are many different films, but the best TV adaptation of Sherlock Holmes is, without any doubt, the series Sherlock. And you can watch it on BBC or on Netflix, and it is played by Benedict Cumberbatch, who's a really well-known actor and a fantastic actor. He's got a very distinguishable face and accent, but I really like him. And he plays the leading role of Sherlock Holmes, and he is accompanied by his sidekick. I've forgotten the name of Sherlock Holmes' assistant. It's on the tip of my tongue, but I can't remember. I'll look it up after I record. But anyway, this is a great adaptation of Sherlock Holmes, and it's set in the modern times. And the series came out, I think, 10 or 15 years ago. And it's basically looking at how the detective, Sherlock Holmes, is able to solve different mysteries and crimes using his intellect and his ingenious mind. And it's really good. If you're interested in Sherlock at all, 100% check out this series. The episodes are quite long. I think each episode is like 90 minutes. So it's basically like watching a film. But there are a few seasons as well. And I watched it quite a long time ago, so I don't remember everything in exact details, but I've recommended it to a few different students, and they've all given me glowing reviews saying that it's one of the best series that they've ever watched. So that is Sherlock, everybody. Our next one is wait for it, Dairy. It's legendary. And no, it is not How I Met Your Mother, because that's American, and it's not the best series either. But I just felt like saying legendary in that way. This is The Office, the original Office. Now, you might have already watched the US Office with Steve Carell and Dwight, and honestly, I absolutely love The Office as well. The US Office, I mean. But the original, what started it, is the UK Office. And, well, it was created by Ricky Gervais, who's a famous comedian and actor and writer and producer. And he had clearly gone through some of these moments in his own working life, working in different offices, of how you'd have different characters in the office and they'd all interact with each other in a variety of ways. So it's a comedy. Of course, it is very similar to the US Office because this is what inspired the US Office and came before it. And for the purists, they will say that the English version is better. I actually disagree with that. I think that the US Office is better just because the actors are perhaps a little bit better with Dwight and Michael. I think those two characters in the US Office are incredible. But the UK Office is almost as good, and it's much shorter. There are only 2 seasons, but you'll see the same characters, essentially, as you see in the US Office. And it's nice to see, if you are a big Office fan, how the two are different. So anyway, I'm not going to tell you any more about it because I'm sure you're familiar with the US Office. But if you've already watched the US Office, then you've got to check out the original. Check out what inspired the US Office with the UK Office. It's great. Okay, let's continue. We've just got a few more now. And this one is Taskmaster. So Taskmaster is a game show with comedians. So you have 2 people who are in charge of creating the challenges and the games and awarding points for who wins and who loses. But in every season, you have 5 relatively famous comedians from the UK, or at least who are living in the UK, and they have to do different challenges. Challenges could be, for example, I don't know. Let's say there is a ball in a tree at the top, stuck in a branch, and they have to get the ball down. They'll have other challenges where they have to eat 10 bananas, for example. They're just random things off the top of my head. But the premise of the TV show is that you have a challenge or multiple challenges every episode, and these people who are in charge will give votes, and at the same time, it's with comedians, so they'll be telling jokes and doing silly things all the time. So it's a nice, happy-go-lucky program that will make you laugh, it'll make you giggle, it'll make you smile whilst you're watching it, and it'll allow you to have fun. And one of the most interesting things with Taskmaster is that you can watch it all on YouTube. So they actually have uploaded all of the episodes to YouTube, so you can watch it 100% for free. What's not to like? What is not to like? So that is Taskmaster. If you're up for a laugh and want to see some comedians getting into some strange scenarios, then that is a good choice. And another one, our next recommendation, is very, very British and quite Welsh. So this is the only recommendation where you'll be able to practice and get used to a Welsh accent. Welsh, by that I mean people from Wales. And the program is called Gavin and Stacey. And it's about a group of friends or connections or family who are all connected by the two main people. We have Gavin and Stacey. And I think that Gavin was from London and Stacey was from a small village in Wales, in the valleys. And they get together, they start going out and become an item, they become a couple. So then Gavin moves over with his friend, and it just shows kind of regular, normal life for a percentage of British people, in particular in Wales. So it's quite difficult because the Welsh accent is a little bit stronger than the Queen's English and RP English, but it's good practice. And this has been a huge hit in the United Kingdom. Personally, I haven't watched all of the episodes, but I know it's very, very popular because they always do a Christmas special. So now the TV program has ended. It finished quite a long time ago. However, they still get together and record one Christmas special every year. And usually for Christmas, people will end up watching this program because, it makes them feel nostalgic, that they're going back in time. And it's a very easy thing to watch because there's no violence, there's no bad feelings. It's just people doing funny things and showing like regular life. So it's almost like a soap opera, but it's much, much shorter. With soap operas, it's very, very dramatic and you have many episodes. In this case, it's less dramatic and it no longer airs. So they only did a few seasons, I think. But that is Gavin and Stacey. Okay, I think this is the penultimate recommendation, and it is The Apprentice. So this is the UK Apprentice, for your information. Not the US Apprentice, because the US Apprentice was, I think, the original, and it was with Donald Trump. And this was Donald Trump when he was still kind of funny and nobody took him seriously. And the Donald Trump we know nowadays, I hate him. I think he is the most dangerous person on the planet, and he's becoming a bit of a dictator. So, I won't say anything else about that because let's keep it light-hearted. But just so you know, I do not like Donald Trump one bit, not at all. And Donald Trump was the host of the US Apprentice, but this one is the UK Apprentice. And the host is Lord Sugar. That's his name. He's a lord, and his last name is Sugar. And it's a bit of a reality TV program. There are many, many, many seasons where you have aspiring entrepreneurs and business people who will sign up for the program, and they try to win basically a position or financing and funding from this notable businessman in London. So every episode, they have to do different challenges, which could be related to marketing. They could be related to sales, related to, money in general. So it's a really good way of practicing some business English because the whole program is based around preparing people and training people to be good business people, to be good entrepreneurs. So every episode, they vote someone off the program. And then at the end, the winner wins this contract or funding from Lord Sugar, who is the ultimate decision maker because he's a very wealthy businessman and he must do this program as a little bit of a side hustle and a way of continuing to expand his reach and reputation. But The Apprentice, it's quite good. It's nothing special, but if you want some more businessy vocabulary, then it's a pretty good option. So that is The Apprentice. And last but not least, we're finishing with another BBC series, and it's another one that is related to the police and related to crime and mystery and thrillers. And it is called Luther. Luther. And Luther is the name of the main character, and he's played by Idris Elba, a really famous actor who's really good, and he's from London. The series is set in London as well. And Luther is a bit of a complicated person. So he's a detective. He's always trying to solve different crimes, but he's maybe not the cleanest detective. So sometimes he doesn't mind breaking rules and doing things in a little bit of an unconventional way in order to get the job done. It's quite dark, it's quite sinister, but it's a really, really good series. I think it's all on Netflix and BBC as well, so you can check it all out. And it's quite dark, but in some ways it's similar to Sherlock, for example, where you're always guessing and thinking who might be behind a crime. You're thinking what's going on. And Luther is really good. I remember watching it all, maybe binge watching it all, quite a long time ago. It stopped airing maybe a decade ago. But Luther is really, really good. And if you're into police dramas, this is a fantastic option for you. And on that note, I believe that's all of them. Yeah. That is all 15 of my recommendations for you if you want to practice your British English by watching series. So I hope you enjoyed listening or watching to... What am I talking about? I hope you enjoyed listening to this podcast or watching it. And if you have any other suggestions for British English TV shows, then let me know. And as always, if you'd like to join my classes, then there is a link in the description. And you can also send me a message in the comments on Instagram, you name it, wherever you want. And you can actually book your classes on my website, which is www.englishwithlewis.com/classes. If you want to be my student, I would be honored to have you. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed some of these series or game shows. And if you do end up watching them, let me know. Let me know if you're a fan or not. So thank you, everybody, and see you next time. Bye-bye.